Let's go ahead and rip off the bandage for a moment. People don't talk about the weight that comes with leading. I'm not talking about the title. I'm not talking about recognition. I'm talking about the weight. Because once you're responsible for outcomes, everything changes. You don't just carry your own decisions when you become a leader. You carry in a responsibility in the livelihood of other people. You're carrying expectations you didn't ask for. You're carrying problems nobody else seems to know how to solve or are uncomfortable solving. And so therefore, all of these decisions come to you. And most of the time, you're expected to look like you have it all handled. Because if you stress and if you fall apart, your team absorbs that energy. And so that's where pressure shows up differently. It's not always loud and chaotic initially. Sometimes it's subtle. Sometimes it shows up in how fast your thinking starts to move, how your clarity drops, or it may even show up in how your communication starts to miss by just enough. You see, I've spent years in environments where that kind of pressure wasn't optional, and we had to embrace it. Where decisions had consequences, and sometimes these consequences was life or death. In the Marine Corps, we operate that mission first, and a lot of times there were elements where leaders were in charge, and it was a zero defect mentality, meaning this is what I want. This is my vision that I need accomplished. And as the Marines, we just had to figure out a way of accomplishing that vision. Period. Doesn't matter whether we had equipment, we didn't have equipment, doesn't matter what the weather was like, doesn't matter what the environment was like, just it needed to get done. And the mindset was, how do we accomplish this task? Period. And so we'll have meetings, we'll have discussions to come to a clearer understanding of the best method and approach with everybody in their perspective, skills, right? The level of mastery as chiefs of their sections, and how we're going to accomplish this overall vision. And so once that input is given, come to the conclusion of that meeting, boom, we're moving forward. Case in point, we had a colonel that we were relocating the regiment from one part of the base to another part of the base. And I was a network communications chief. And so my responsibilities were everything that was related to networks, voice over internet protocol phones, the computers, fax machines, all the routing protocols when it came to everything digital, electronic, when it came to communication. And so we had to move not only the regiment, but all the battalions that were associated with the regiment to a different part of the base. And I remember coming back from that meeting, we were given a time in which it had to be done, no later than. I talked to the team and I said, hey, this is the mission. This is what we have. This is, the timeline in which we need to get it done. Let's go ahead and outline the process in which we're going to take steps to get this accomplished. We know initially we need to verify all the phone numbers on the call roster are accurate, because if not, we're transferring information that is inaccurate, and that makes no sense. So we need to verify all the information. So sent some Marines around just verifying information, right? When they came back, compile that information with updated phone numbers, confirmed phone numbers, confirmed port numbers, confirmed, rooms and all these other factors like that. And then I remember looking at one of the Marines and I said, hey, listen, I want you to take charge of this task, right? I'm going to give you full responsibility to do this relocation and merger to the other part of the base. And if you run into any issues, I just want you to reach out to me. Otherwise, we'll have a meeting once a week to figure out what the updates are. And when we have this meeting once a week, I just need the top 3 points. Are we on track, off track? Where do you stand? And what support do you need? And he took charge of this. I told him put together a team of who you need to support you. I'm going to give you authority to do that. And whatever support you need, I'll make sure you have it. Right. This Marine was an E3 in charge of moving the network communications assets for over 2,500 people. And the reason I delegated that task is because I want the people that I was leading to have the ability to feel the weight of a big task. I wanted them to feel the weight and the responsibility of doing something outside of their day-to-day activity, something that made them feel like, ooh, I got to rise up to this occasion, something that stretched them, but still was within the wheelhouse. And what I found to be very interesting with doing this is that the Marine was extremely excited to take on this task, and that have that level of leadership and responsibility, it actually brought out a part of him that I didn't see previously. And so I was glad to make that decision. And my only thing is, I don't care how you do it whatever way that you see fit. Just don't do something that's going to incriminate yourself or put you in prison, or don't do something that's going to incriminate me or put me in prison or put me in a place where I'm trying to defend you, and then we both end up in prison, right? So as long as you do things legally in the way they should be, just get it done. And then weekly you update me, because this is real decisions. And I think a lot of times I see leaders are afraid to delegate because they feel they have to be the one to hold all the weights. When you make so many decisions in a day, you start to get decision fatigue. And so now you're not even as clear, though you think you are. And what we think we should do is just push, 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 drive harder when things are falling off, go faster. And that's not the answer. That's like jumping into a race car, being an inexperienced driver, but yet you're supposed to navigate around the track at 100 and something miles an hour, right? You have to build up the tolerance for that. You have to build up the ability to slow down your thinking, to regulate your system when the pressure increases. And that's just not something that's oftentimes taught, right? When people jump into business or when people hire others into a team, we're talking about leadership and development. We're talking about trainings and all these other aspects, but that's that part of clarity on the inside that seems to go missing a lot of times. And as a leader, you're in that position, and who do you talk to about that? Right? So then that becomes lonely, and you feel isolated on this island, and you feel this enormous amount of pressure. And then when life starts, it hits you upside the head, left and right, whether that's medical issues, whether that's family issues, whether that's issues with the pets, issues with the cars, revenue issues in the business, whatever that may be. Life is going to push these additional challenges. I remember reading some years back this thing that talked about, if you were a piece of plywood, in this visual analogy, and I placed you on some center blocks. And then I took other center blocks and I put it and started to stack it. There's only so many center blocks that as this plywood, based on its thickness, its preparation, all these other factors, it's only so much weight it can hold. Eventually, if I stack piece by piece and I slowly add the weight, you'll start to hear the fibers fracture. You'll start to hear the cracks form before the break happens if I'm slowly adding pressure. And then if I continue to add pressure, boom, eventually there goes the snap. And the way the thing went is that all you have to do is remove one brick at a time. And by moving one brick at a time, this gives you the flexibility and freedom so that if another brick is added, you don't break, you don't crack, right? It's like the term, the straw that broke the camel's back. Well, it wasn't the straw that broke the camel's back. It was all the weight prior to the straw that broke the camel's back. And this is the weight that we carry as leaders. And honestly, the issue isn't the weight. It's how we're carrying the load, right? And when I gave the story about the Marine earlier, I give this example because it's important to be able to hand off and delegate things, empower people to make hard decisions, right? And then that frees you up to do other things, to be creative, to focus on the vision and how can I drive the company forward, and how can I, that gives you that freedom and flexibility to do that. But when every decision has to be made by you as a leader, it doesn't yield for good results long term. You start to have decision fatigue. Your decision clarity starts to erode. Because your decision clarity starts to erode, the team isn't as clear on what they should be doing or how they should be doing it, why they should be doing it, whatever factors go on through their mind. And then from that, in martial arts, I learned an ounce of pressure deflects a mile. And so what started off as good intention, but a lack of clarity, ends up down the road being missed deadlines, right? Being missed revenue, being all these other factors that most times in business you only see it after the fact. So you stay in this reactive stage. But what if we empowered people who had the skill, who had the drive, who had the fire, and we just trained them to be better at accomplishing that task? Wouldn't that reduce so much weight and responsibility to give them that task, to entrust them? And then at your weekly meeting, they're just briefing you on where they stand in that task for the mission. In the Marine Corps, we get with the commanding officer and we make sure that we're in alignment with their vision. All of the section chiefs and all of the officers in charge for each respective section will come to the meeting, and that's what we did. We discussed, hey, The commanding officer colonel will give their vision. Hey, this is what I want to happen over the next couple of years. This is what I want to happen at this time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then it was up to all the officers in charge and the section chiefs to understand their role in that vision and then come up with a plan on how they would help accomplish that vision. But it's not up to the commanding officer to be, as we would refer to, in the weeds of the day-to-day activities on all of that. Why? Why do you need to know that? What you need to know is, are we on track to accomplishing the vision? And that people have standards in which they need to operate, left and right lateral limits, to be able to perform effectively. But ultimately, every decision on all these miscellaneous tasks is useless to you as a leader to be caught up in that to make that. And I think what I've learned from witnessing leaders that struggle with this is that it really says that there's a control issue, there's a micromanagement issue, and when pressure starts to increase, most leaders default to the idea that, oh, just get out of the way, I'll get it done myself. Where's the development of your team in that, right? And if you present always as the only one with the answer, or that your answer is the only right answer, why would your team want to evolve? How would they? So we create so many other bottlenecks in the decision making process, and a lot of times it's the leader that is the issue. When I was a recruiter, station commander, I remember being told I spent too much time training the Marines, and I didn't do enough time being a station commander. And I didn't understand that. But what happened was, as pressure continued to increase, I knew recruiting extremely well. I knew how to communicate. I knew how to sell. I knew how to find individuals' needs, their motivators, what drives them. And I take a genuine interest in understanding about the person that I'm talking to. And in doing that, for me, recruiting duty, it had its pressurous moments, but it wasn't necessarily something that was going to break me or destroy me, because in the end, my goal is to always get the goal accomplished. But as a station commander, when I was running a station of five Marines, and we were close to missing mission, or we did miss mission, right? In the moments when we did miss mission, pressure only increased, right? The command is coming down on our back. The other station commanders are having to carry that weight of mission that we missed, whether it was one or two. And so then that starts to build up a lack of trust from my peers as other station commanders, And so all of these things start to unfold. And I started to just say, okay, cool. I'm just going to go with you every single day. Pick a different recruiter, Monday through Friday, go with. And I started noticing eventually, months later, that I was acting as a recruiter and not as a station commander, because I had allowed the pressure to distort my vision of the long-term mission. And for me, as a leader, my long-term mission was to ensure that the Marines were trained effectively, figure out what bottlenecks they had, where were they stuck, what weaknesses did they have, train to those weaknesses, understand what was going on in their personal lives, what was going on with their families, taking a genuine interest in them. And I missed that for quite some time because I was so focused on the mission. And when the pressure increased and I had to make more decisions, and then they felt the pressure because I was implementing more pressure on them, it just started to erode the performance of the overall team. And it took me some time to realize that I was setting the tone in that environment. It didn't matter what pressure was being applied from the outside. If I was able to regulate myself, to remain clear in those moments, I could shield the team from a lot of additional pressures, and then I wouldn't be adding extra pressures on them. And from that, when I did make that transition, then the culture started to improve, mission started being met, but it took some time to get there. It's a very difficult thing to see when you're in it. It's almost like when you're in a storm, your line of sight becomes shortened than it would be if it was a clear day. Things become very close in front of you, and if the storm is bad enough, you barely could see that. And it's about navigating through those experiences. It's about taking the time to regulate yourself under this pressure, removing the bricks, right? You hear me talk a lot about the 80-20 rule. What are some things that need to be applied What are a lot of things that I could just get rid of? There's a lot of things we add on the plate because we're doing more and we think that in doing more, that's the answer. But sometimes in doing more is even with the world of AI, right? You know, the system yields to be true for health and all that stuff. What you put in is what you get out, right? If you put crap inside your body, if you put crap inside of AI, if you put crap inside your business, if you put crap inside your systems, that's what you're going to get out. And doing more of that and doing it faster, it doesn't give you better results. You still got crap. So it's better to slow things down. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Look at the processes. Look at who's making what decisions. Look at where decisions are being held up. Look at where the weaknesses are starting to become exposed because of pressure. And then address the need. And then once you address the need, now everything can run smoother. So the move isn't to push harder. The move is to slow down your thinking just enough so that your decisions can stay clean. Pressure doesn't break the leaders itself, but it will expose how you think. You already feel the weight. The question is, are you clear while you're carrying it? As always, you know, I like to close these things out with a song. And so today I want to close out with a song called Pressure Code. I really want you to take the time to listen to the lyrics, read the lyrics, because this framework is the solution to how we started this video out with the weight that we don't talk about. This is how you deal with it. I hope you enjoy.
Pressure on my back, but I don't bend. I feel the room move, then I check my breath. What they call a rush, I call a test. I keep my eyes clear, my pulse and step. Pause for the pool, pause for the flame. What looks like a storm ain't always the same. Recognize the truth before it drifts away. I see through the noise and I make my way. Pause, recognize, execute. Pause, recognize, execute. Highest frequency when I move with you. Pause, recognize, execute. Pause, recognize, execute. No panic in my chest, just a clear-cut view. I read the faces, I read the air. Some people rushing to lose what's there, but I stay grounded, feet in the sand. I don't chase the moment, I let it land. Pause for the pool, pause for the flame. What looks like a storm ain't always the same. Recognize the truth before it drifts away. I see through the noise, then I make my way. Pause, recognize, execute. Pause, recognize, execute. Highest frequency when I move with you. Pause, recognize, execute. Pause, recognize, execute. No panic in my chest, just a clear-cut view. When the crowd gets loud, I lean in slow. My heart stays open, my spirit knows. Clarity comes when I let it breathe. Then I step so sure, like it's meant for me. Recognize, execute. Pause, recognize, execute. Highest frequency when I move with you. Pause, recognize, execute. Pause, recognize, execute. No panic in my chest, just a clear-cut view.